My name is Janelle and this is JP. Today we're with Miss Mitchell from Bill Crothers Secondary School. So Miss Mitchell, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Like education-wise and
What you've done.
what I've done. Okay, so I've worked for the school board for 9 years. I've had the opportunity to work with a variety of students in a variety of different classes. For 4 years, I worked in an autism class, working with students with high needs autism. And I did that for 4 years, and then I ended up getting surplused and moved to another school where I worked in a Section 23 class, where intellectually the students were at par with a lot of the other students, but...
Adrian Bradley, report to room 1007. Adrian Bradley, report to room 1007.
But their behavior was such that would stop them from being integrated into a full classroom setting. And then I had the amazing opportunity to work here at Bill Crothers in a DD special needs classroom, where I support a wide variety of students academically and physically.
Okay. Why did you choose to become like a special education teacher as opposed to like a different type of teacher?
Okay, so I'm not sure. I'm an educational assistant, so I'm not actually the teacher of the classroom. Mr. H is the teacher of the classroom. But from a really, really young age, every job I've ever had had to do with working with people. I had an opportunity working, helping in an office when I was 12 or 13, and I didn't like having to sit in front of the computer. I liked being up and about. So I had an opportunity to work at different camps. I worked at a social skills camp, so teaching students just how to behave in a setting, where they would maybe have some uncomfortableness about doing that. So I knew after high school, I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work with people in some capacity. Nick, can you give us just a second? Thanks, buddy. So I knew I wanted to work with people in a certain capacity, and I met with a career counselor at Fanshawe College and kind of talked to me about the different programs that they offer. And so I went to school for developmental service worker, so that's working with adults and children with disabilities, and I really, really liked it. And yeah, it was great. There was different jobs. I worked at a group home for a little while. But that was really draining, and I also, the shifts working at a group home, you kind of get the crappier shifts when you first start out. Okay. So I really liked school-age children, so I kind of went through that pathway and have been working for the board ever since.
So do you find that people have a false idea of students with either learning disabilities or mental health issues?
Yeah, I think, especially for the students in the class that I'm with right now, the kids in my class are extremely capable, and I think what happens is there's students also in the school who might not know a lot about disabilities and maybe are scared or a little apprehensive to sometimes come into our classroom because they don't know what to expect. But when they slowly get to know our students, they realize that they're extremely capable kids. It might take them a little bit longer to, understand something, but that they have a lot to bring to the table. We have a student specifically who has 2 job placements. One working at Sheridan Nurseries, watering the plants, sweeping up, helping customers take their plants to their car. He also works at a nursing home washing dishes, and not just washing dishes, but organizing the plates, making sure that certain things go into the recycling. He also is able to transit train, so he can take the YRT completely independently. But that's after working with him for a little bit on transit training, but that the kids, there is no limit to what students and people with mental illness can achieve. They're very, very successful people, and I think maybe it's just a lack of information for people.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess like going along with like the sort of like misinformation sort of thing, like how do you think like in what ways can like people become more informed about like mental health issues and learning disabilities?
I think there was a huge stigma, especially from when I was in high school to when you guys are now. I feel like mental illness, and not that I have a large experience with mental illness, but I think, nobody wants to be different. Everybody wants to be accepted. So I find a lot of people who, have a learning disability or maybe are experiencing some form of mental illness, they keep it to themselves. They don't talk about it. And in my experience when I was in high school, if there was any issue, you didn't really talk about it. There also wasn't a lot of the clubs that you have at the school now, which, encourages people to talk out and, join around each other and just having a support, which is really, really great. And I think, you guys right now are at an advantage because there is so much information out there about mental illness and disabilities, and there's a lot of programs that offer support for it as well too.
Mm-hmm.
So talking about the awareness, do you believe that there's a mental health awareness day and then Bell Let's Talk? Do you think that's doing enough, or should there be?
Can you give me like 10 minutes? Yeah, thanks, buddy. Sorry.
So do you think things like Bell Let's Talk do enough to promote awareness?
I'm not overly familiar with the Bell Let's Talk, but I think, like I was saying before, in my experience, I feel like there is so much more information out there, and there's always room for improvement. There's always room for doing more, whether it be other organizations coming out and talking about it and having people come into the school. I think that's another thing too. When I was in high school, there wasn't any talk about it. Like, I don't remember anyone coming in and talking about mental illness. Whereas I think like now people are starting to come in and they're realizing that there's so many people that are affected by mental illness, and it doesn't present itself like an injury. I mean, like, you look around the school, like, kids are walking with casts or they have crutches or whatever. Like, mental illness isn't something that you can always see, and so there is always room for, information.
Let's see. Why do you think that some individuals feel ashamed if they have a mental illness? Like, should they, like, why are they so apprehensive to open up about it?
I think a lot of it has to do with maturity. I know for myself, like in school, like when I was in high school and even in elementary school, I struggled really, really hard with math. Like, I wasn't very good at it. It didn't matter how many different teachers explained it as many different ways. And it was just me not wanting to accept help because I just wanted to be like everybody else. I didn't want people to see that I could struggle. And I think that that's a huge thing, that people feel ashamed because they just want to belong. And maturity too. I mean, you guys have so many stresses now, I find, as teenagers. I mean, there's so much social media, and that's a great thing. It's a great tool, but at the same time, it can be a negative tool. Everything's videotaped, everything's, so you have one little slip up, you do something silly or whatever, and it's documented, and then that kind of stays with you. And I think, kids are just scared to open up about it, and that's why, I mean, for myself and Mr. H in the classroom, like, we have an open door policy. Like, I would love for kids to come and talk, and I'm not going to judge them. Like, I mean, I've been through, bullying and all that kind of stuff, and it's tough. But I think, just, kids are ashamed of, being labeled with something because everybody just wants to belong. And there's nothing wrong with having a mental illness or a disability or, and it's just, I think too, and you will realize as you get older that you love the person that you are, and you don't try to change that person as much as you do when you're younger to try to fit in.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So like there are different types of like mental illness. Like there's like depression and like eating disorders, like autism, like people that you work should like some be like, considered like more, I don't know the word, like should be like considered more highly, I guess, than others? Like, should like we take like depression more seriously than we should take like an eating disorder or something like that?
I think you can't classify it into like sections like that, because mental illness, there's so many things that go along with it. So you can't categorize it like, okay, what's more important, because everybody's different, everybody has different life experiences. So, you know, I might have an eating disorder, but I also might have gone through something else in my life that could be just as scary as someone with really bad depression. So I think it's difficult to kind of categorize it. I think, you know, there should just be an awareness that, you know, any form of disability or mental illness just be taken very, very seriously, and for everybody to know that, you know, they do have a place to talk openly about it, and that people can support them. And education is a really big thing, information, and everybody's learning about, you know, different mental illnesses and disabilities every single day. I hope that answers your
Jenna
question.
Kassam, please come to the main office. Jenna Kassam.
I guess like, why do you think it's so easy for some individuals to ignore mental illness?
Like the person with a mental illness? I think too, I mean, especially like teenagers, and I'm using teenagers because I don't have a lot of experience with adults with mental illness, and I have worked with some students in elementary school that have mental illness. I think they're just unsure of what's happening in their body or their thoughts, and because they don't want to stand out. I mean, specifically we had a student who he had really bad thoughts about his brother. Like he just, it was a younger brother, and his younger brother, you know, would get a lot of attention, and he just really didn't, and he didn't want to verbalize with his parents or teachers because the thoughts that he had in his head were really, 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 really bad. So I think a lot of it is just sometimes people don't know, like have no idea what's going on and why they're thinking the things that they are. And like, I think what happens too is if they do approach an adult or a parent or something like that about what they're feeling, it's really important that the adult that they're talking to gives them the right steps and is a listening ear. Because I think what happens sometimes is, yeah, if you have thoughts about, you know, harming yourself or harming, you know, another person, and that adult doesn't, you know, kind of not support you, but listen to what you're saying and quickly like, well, that's silly, I can't believe you think like that. That person now is not going to open up to another person.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so like, if like we were like faced with someone who was like had like a student who had like a mental illness, would it be more beneficial for us just to like listen to what they have to say, like if they were to open up to us, or should we like try and intervene and try and like help them and like try and like get someone like yourself or like an expert per se to like take hold of like a situation?
Yeah, see, that's tough because I mean, a lot of times people just want somebody who's going to listen to them and not entirely try to solve their problems. In my situation of, you know, people who have come to me. But also, like, I think it's great that you guys think I'm an expert, but I definitely don't feel like I'm an expert. And if somebody came to me with some really, you know, some interesting thoughts that I don't feel that I would be equipped to deal with, if it was, you know, suicide or something, I mean, it's a big thing to be able to give somebody information. I would utilize like the school psychologist. I would talk to them, and I know, you know, a lot of teachers, if somebody has come to them with any issues and they don't feel totally equipped to deal with it, like definitely, you know, you talk to your admin, you talk to a psychologist and stuff, because we're not really totally equipped to be able to deal with it. We can point you in the right direction. We can be like a kind listening ear. But yeah, I think for students especially, like if yourselves, you know, somebody's coming to you and they're just like, you know, I'm feeling really upset. I don't understand what's going on, you know, with me. I'm having all these thoughts and I'm just really hating life. And I mean, stress is another big thing. You guys are faced with so much stress, you know, university and marks and sports and all that kind of stuff. I think like a listening ear. Hi, buddy. Can you give me 1 minute?
Miss Yusuf said Miss Mitchell is there.
Oh, okay. Can you guys just hit pause just for 1 second? Sorry. I'm just gonna...
So if you could come up with your own awareness for mental health issues, what would it be?
That is a kind of a tough question. Great question, but a tough question. Off the top of my head, I can't like totally think of an awareness thing that I would do, but just I think if I had to go speak at an assembly or something and do something very, very brief, it's that like communication is key, and as much as it's really, really tough to, you know, admit that you're feeling a certain way or that you feel overwhelmed, that there is people out there who will listen to you, and if we can't give you the answers that you need, that we would put you in the direction of being able to get help or to talk to somebody. Because I think a huge problem is that people just don't talk it out. Or maybe that they have talked it out and they haven't been put with the right people. But I think, you know, there's all these videos on YouTube now of, you know, students and kids talking about mental illness, and it's great because I feel like for such a long time it was such a hush-hush thing because there wasn't a lot of information about it. So I just think, like, anything that I would say is if you're feeling a certain way and you're unsure, find somebody that you feel safe talking to, somebody who's going to make you feel good, and talk to them about what's happening in your life. And even that might make you feel better, just knowing that somebody's listening and trying to understand where you're coming from. And then, you know, if it goes beyond that, you know, trying to seek out talking to somebody who's a professional. Yeah.
Does our school have a school psychologist?
Yep.
We do.
Yep.
Okay. Do most high schools have school psychologists?
I'm pretty sure they do. I'm not entirely sure, but I know in light of what has happened at our school over the last 7 months with
Mr. Virgo or Ms. Casper, please call extension 1180, please. Mr. Virgo or Ms. Casper, call extension 1180.
What's happened with the death of 3 students. You know, the board has to put things into place because, and I think that was a huge thing too with our school, is a lot of teachers and EAs and stuff like that felt overwhelmed because, I mean, what do we say? We aren't psychologists. So that was a big thing in the meetings that we'd have, is just be like a listening ear, listen, and then any kind of signs, if you could see that, you know, it was really, really difficult, to refer them maybe to the school psychologist.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that every school would have somebody in contact. You know, or they might not have one psychologist. It might be like one psychologist for a few different schools. You have to give me 1 minute. Yeah.
Okay. I guess, like, if you have any like last minute thoughts or comments about mental illness, I guess you could just add them now. Yeah.
Well, like I said before, I can't speak enough. Like I think it's great. You guys think I'm like an expert. I feel like I do the best that I can. If a student comes to me and, you know, is feeling a certain way, that I will listen to them. And then if I'm unsure of the information that I've heard, I will always go to a second party just to see, you know, what they think. And if it's something that we need to move to like a second step, then doing that. And just, I think the other thing is there's nothing wrong. Nobody's perfect. Who you are is who you are, and to embrace that. And I know that it's really difficult to always do that because there's so many things going around and, you know, like outside sources and stuff, but, you know, just to try to accept who you are and love who you are. And I know that that's tough sometimes, and it's hard when you're a teenager and you're going through all this stuff, but, you know, and if you need to talk to somebody, to find somebody that you can talk to. That's what I would say.
Okay.
So, on behalf of JP and the rest of our group, we just like to say thank you for allowing us to interview you.
Thank you. I hope it was informative. I hope you got everything that you needed to get.